Welcome, everyone, to episode 4 of the Ranch Podcast, the Dallas Sports Podcast. My name is Tex. This is my buddy James. We're going to be going over everything that happened in Dallas sports this past week and be projecting a little bit into the future of the current week. But we're going to start off with the Texas Rangers, who had a major turn from the previous weeks. We were looking at them maybe skirting by into the playoffs, and they went on a winning streak, winning 7 games in a row, including a sweep of the Mariners, which was huge for them. Unfortunately, losing yesterday. They are currently winning right now in the middle of the 5th, as it is the 27th. They're up 2-0 in the middle of the 5th. So if they win that series versus the Angels, they'll be heading back to Seattle to finish their season off. But they're on a pretty good hot streak, and I think, like we were talking about last week, getting on this hot streak is what they're going to need to get into that playoffs and make a good run in there. They do have a magic number of 3 to be able to be the second place team in the AL, which would guarantee a home field advantage, except if they're playing the Orioles, which would be huge for the Rangers. They do perform pretty well in the playoffs at home. Obviously, we know about St. Louis, that Albert Pujols game, but they do generally perform pretty good at home when they're in the playoffs. So getting that number 2 seed is for sure huge. I mean, they could technically still get the number 1 seed. The Orioles only have to win 1 game. They're most likely going to, and they're going to get their first 100-win season in a while. It's been a while since we've seen the Orioles get a 100-win season. I don't even think their last playoff team was a 100-win team. But in order to get the playoffs, the Rangers are, I think they're 2 games. Their magic number is a 2 game to get the 6th seed. It is. So as long as they win the next 2 games, or they win this game and the Astros lose their game, then they are a lock for the playoffs, which is huge for them. Getting that guaranteed playoff spot would kind of help them rest at the end of the season, get their starters all healthy and everything. But that winning streak is huge. Have you been able to catch any of the games?
I haven't. Which one did I catch? There's a few that I catch in there, but not necessarily a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I keep writing notes on it, but we kept pushing back what day we were doing this. And so I saw it go from kind of they're a few games behind in the AL West, and then I had notes on here, and I was like, they're a game up in the AL West, and now they're back up to 2.5 games ahead.
Yeah.
Fuck the Astros. They have a losing record at home. That's embarrassing.
My team's out of the playoffs, so I have no dog in this fight. Really, it's just Seattle, Houston, and the Blue Jays fighting for a spot in the playoffs. But yeah, the Astros have been 3-7 in their last 10. Mariners have been 4-6. I mean, this seems like a lock, especially if they win tonight. Yeah. I believe if they win tonight, they're 3 games up. The worst they can do is tie, and I don't know who has the tiebreaker. I think the Astros might have the tiebreaker, just from head-to-head games. But we swept Seattle not even a week ago. They could do it again, and it's a 4-game series, so I guess technically 3 games up isn't a guarantee, but you never know. Baseball is a wild sport.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, and I was talking to some people at the bar about it, but it's we're getting some good players back at the right time and from injuries and that sort of stuff. So, and those players can get you 6 to 7 runs a night if everything's clicking right. You just obviously need your pitchers not to be giving up 8 and 9 runs a night.
Yes.
So yeah, and we're close enough to the end of the season. I think they'll get this hot streak going into the playoffs. Because I think they're pretty much going to get in the playoffs. I mean, they're in a close race with the Mariners, I guess, and they'll, I guess, decide each other's fate essentially, depending on how it goes. But fuck the Astros again, by the way. But they're gonna, and if they keep playing this way, maybe my first round bounce prediction will be wrong. I don't know if I think they can hang with some of these some of those teams up there like Baltimore. Not that they'd play the Braves, but the Braves and those
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they'd be able to hang with some of those teams, but
Well, so looking into the playoffs, so the season ended right now where it was. The Orioles would play the Astros. I think the Astros win that game. Again, the Orioles, I think they're a great team. I think they're just too inexperienced, especially in the playoffs. The Rangers would be playing the Blue Jays. That one's a little tough. The Blue Jays have some experience, have some, really good bats. And it really depends on how the Blue Jays are playing. If they're playing on a hot streak, just like if the Rangers are as well. Twins would play the Rays. And then the Rangers would play either the winner of the Rays or the Twins, I believe. Yes. And I think that's both those teams are beatable for the Rangers. So I think obviously they still got to play good baseball. Obviously they still have to be on their hot streak. The pitching has to be good. And we may not see the offense be as good. Corey Seager does have a forearm contusion after a hit by pitch. Don't know how that's going to affect him with the short amount of games left. But he is a huge bat for them to be missing out on, especially this close to the postseason. But like I was saying, if they can get to the Rays or the Twins, I think that's a pretty much not a guarantee. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed in baseball, but there's a really high likely chance that we see the Rangers go to the AL Championship game. That AL Championship game, I think, is going to be the hardest struggle for them, depending on who they play, whether it be the Orioles, the Astros, Rays, Twins, Blue Jays. I don't know who it'll be. But I think that one is going to be really tough for them, especially trying to get ahead of themselves and getting to the World Series. They got to focus on one game at a time. I think that's the mantra they need to take into the ending games of this season. Well,
I agree.
Well, moving on to college football. Not a extremely exciting week of college football. I mean, exciting in the sense of some teams won, some teams lost. Nothing crazy, except for Ohio State and Notre Dame fans. If your goal is to play 10 people on defense, then Notre Dame is your team. And I saw today, there's multiple clips of Notre Dame having 10 people on defense. And I think that they've always been playing 10 people on the field for defense, and we're just noticing now. I think that's what we're finding out because, sure, yeah, last second, whatever. Communication's weird. But when we find multiple clips of them having not the number of players on the field, some kind of communication, something's up. Also, the just moronic comments by the coach afterwards saying, I didn't want to take a penalty there. It's half the distance to the goal. I would take half the distance to the goal I would take 10 penalties at that point if that meant I got my player on the field. Anyways, I don't know what that coach was doing. Honestly, deserved to lose that game if that was his strategy. But moving on to the Big 12 for Texas teams and for Big 12 teams, Texas beating Baylor 38-6, huge win for them. Last time they're going to be playing Baylor presumptuously. They're at Baylor in Waco. Tough crowd to play, kind of a trap game for them, coming off of the win from Alabama and the tight one against Wyoming. They are still ranked number 3. I did see some talk about them maybe moving up to 2. Michigan hasn't played anyone yet. We'll have to wait and see. Texas does have a couple early ranked opponents. They have Kansas next week, and then they have Oklahoma the week after. So maybe if they win on those two and they win dominantly, that can push them into the number 2. I don't see them becoming number 1. Like I said last week, I think Georgia is number 1, and I think it's theirs to lose. I think they'll have to basically pull a Florida State, who Florida State almost lost to Clemson last week. This is coming right after their Boston College, I believe it was a 3-point victory in a double overtime. I mean, Florida State looks like a good team. I'm not saying they're bad, but those are some rough games to make the argument for them to be number 4, especially when you have Ohio State beating Notre Dame. You have Washington being dominant, and they're going to have to play Oregon, USC. You got USC who's being dominant. You got Oregon who's being dominant. I mean, it's looking rough for Florida State fans. But speaking of Florida, UCF did take their first loss. Unfortunately, it was to Kansas State. Kansas State is a good team. I'm not going to knock them. I'm not going to knock UCF either. They were missing their starting quarterback. But looking at the score, it's a hard-fought game, 44-31. Did it seem balanced, or did it seem kind of like they just got junk time scores and the game was out of reach before it even started?
So here's the thing. K-State is the defending Big 12 champs, right? So, I mean, it's hard to be like, they're not a good team. They lost a shocker 2 weeks ago. It was kind of close for most of the game until like towards the end of the third and start of the fourth. It just got away from them. It was like maybe 1 or 2 point difference going into the half. I think it was like a 3-point game. And it was. There was an absolutely awful sack that backup quarterback Timmy McClain took towards the end of the game. Towards the end of the third, that pushed them out of field goal, and then they had to punch it away. and Kansas State was just scoring at will, and it kind of turned into a blowout because the 44-31, that final thing, is UCF got a touchdown with like 5 seconds left. That was like a 20-point loss. I can't really count that. But part of that is because they let defensive school UCF let DJ Giddens, the running back, get 207 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
And
that's a rough one to if you're trying to win a football game.
and here's the thing, yeah. So you can't stop the run. And here's the thing, UCF Twitter, like I saw everybody, they were like, this was a game that we should have won. All this was self-inflicted. I was like, no. When you let somebody do that to you, one guy do that to you, that's not self-inflicted. He inflicted it upon you.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
But I think the next week they've got Baylor, and Baylor has not looked good this year. I think UCF has a shot to beat Baylor, and then there's a chance that Plumlee comes back after that, and I think maybe that'll help them out as far as going into the Big 12. But they've already kind of exceeded expectations a little bit for the season, so I'm not sure. Also, our kicker missed his first kick, a 52-yarder, but
Hey, 52 yarders, excuse me, are difficult, especially for college kickers. As one of my favorite YouTubers says, what do college kickers do? They miss. Or as Ninja said, I can't believe kickers just miss. Or how do kickers just miss? Greatest tweet I've ever seen. But speaking on more Big 12 teams and with a dominant performance, and we talked about Colorado last week. We talked about them, their chances of beating Oregon, and right out the gate, that game was ugly. There's a lot of trash talking back and forth, lots of disrespect by both teams. This is a team that has kind of stirred the pot, I think. I mean, we're seeing now 3 weeks in a row some not controversies, but some fire being lit by both sides. I'm not saying it's Colorado's fault, but
I am.
Okay. Granted, yes, this week was more Colorado than it was Oregon, but Nebraska's game I think is a little bit of back and forth. Colorado State, obviously, there's a heated rivalry there, but Oregon, oh my God, put Colorado in their place, 42-6. You want to talk about a dominant run game? It seemed like every time Oregon ran the ball, it was a first down. Like they could not tackle the running back.
This is a really bad weekend for Colorado football.
It was really, really bad. I know you mentioned that the quarterback for Colorado is like one of the has the highest pressure rating. His offensive line is just terrible. Looked it up. Yep, they are tied for second to worst in terms of QB pressure and sacks allowed. And I believe number one was like Memphis, which is not a good sign to like say like, oh, we're not as bad as Memphis. But that's just awful. I mean, they got talent everywhere. You think offensive line is going to be a key thing they look to get or strengthen for the rest of this season and potentially next season. But for Colorado, they have to play USC next week. It is at home. I'm expecting another bloodbath. I think this one's going to be 60 points. I don't know what the money line is for it, but if it's anything below 20, you have to take the money line on USC. I don't think Colorado comes back into this game the way I think UCF can beat Baylor. I think it's just two different levels of competition.
Mm-hmm. And, like I said, but going into the game, Shedeur Sanders was the most pressured college football quarterback. There was 55 QB hits on him in the weeks before. And I think going in, it was like the fourth most sacks allowed. Deion Sanders was saying going into the game, he was like that offensive line is going to be a game changer, and it wasn't. They allowed 7 sacks in the game.
It was in the sense of not for him.
Yeah, but I mean, and here's the thing. And when I said I think it's Colorado's fault this week, is Oregon didn't really say much until after the game, but it was when you've got the coach's son going out onto the field and screaming at fans that like, I'll beat all of your asses and the coaches too, and then you've got players after you guys have been thrown a hissy fit about stomping on the logo. If you've got players going out and stomping on the other team's logo after you've been throwing a hissy fit about it, you can't do that. That's setting yourself up to get shut up. Somebody finally shut them up. Everybody's been talking about Colorado. That's the thing. And whether you like that or you don't, because Colorado was not a good team last year or the year before, is Colorado's been a bad team. So everybody's excited and everybody's talking about it. And the coach is Deion Sanders, but eventually when there's so much talking about it, somebody's going to want you to shut you up. And Oregon did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for Colorado fans, it's still a winning season. You have tripled the amount of wins you have from last season. I think that's a win of itself. You're going to go to a bowl game. I mean, you're going to be playing Arizona State, Stanford, UCLA. That gets you 6 wins right there. And you're going to be bowl eligible. So you're going to get a bowl game for the first time in I don't know when. I don't know if Colorado has been to a bowl game since the last time they were in the Big 12. But you can't look at this as like a major defeat. Yes, it's a major defeat in the sense of like you had high hopes and expectations after your first 3 wins. But if you look at the overall season, you have national attention. You're going into the Big 12. You're going a very vulnerable Big 12, by the way. Like I know I'm a Texas homer, and whatever. Like rah Texas is the best in the Big 12. The Big 12 is playing very bad football this year. Like you look at the out of conference games, the Big 12 has not done well. Texas Tech is not doing well. Baylor's not doing well. Kansas is really the only one that I would say is doing well. Maybe Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati had a good win or two. But the Big 12 has not been performing what people were expecting. We were expecting the Big 12 to be on par with the Big 10 before they add USC. And they're not. They're playing more like the ACC, maybe a lower version of the ACC. It's kind of worrying for Big 12 fans. Obviously Big 12 is going to be becoming a basketball school as they have some major basketball talent in their conference. But yeah, I mean UCF, BYU, they're 3-1. That's great. But Tech is 1-3, Baylor's 1-3, Oklahoma State's 2-2, Houston's 2-2, Cincinnati's 2-2. I mean, it doesn't look great in terms of. We thought Tech would be a potential conference winner. We thought Baylor might take a shot at it. But yeah, it's not looking as powerful as we once thought it. So Colorado coming into the Big 12, I think they have a lot of opportunity to not threaten for a championship, but put their name out there for a championship. I think it'll take a little bit, especially, it's whole different types of offenses and different defenses. But I think it'll be a good shift for Colorado.
I will say I do think worth noting that Bo Nix has been in college for like a billion years.
He has been there for 5 years. He has been there for 5.
He played against Justin Herbert.
It is crazy. And I will say, I remember when he was at Auburn thinking, this guy is so overrated. He is going to be a nothing quarterback. Like he'll play at Auburn, he'll be fine. And then he'll get drafted like Zach Wilson and he'll blow off in the NFL. Watching him in that Oregon game versus Colorado, he looked like a legitimate quarterback. And maybe that's just because of the defense of Colorado, but he looks like a legit NFL quarterback. He doesn't look like, I'm just going to dink and dive, run around kind of college quarterback we expect that, usually wins a Heisman, Johnny Manziel, and then never performs in the NFL. I mean, you could make the argument Marcus Mariota, another Oregon Duck, or Jameis Winston, who, has had a decent career. But I think he might have matured into a very nice quarterback for some team like, obviously not the Saints, but maybe the Raiders look at him instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe the Falcons. Desmond Ridder's been playing pretty well. But speaking of NFL, let's go ahead and move into the NFL. But real quick, we're going to start with NBA news. I know it's kind of a weird shift. The Buccaneers are part of a 3-part trade for Damian Lillard. They traded with the Blazers and the Suns. So the Bucks receive Damian Lillard. They get Dame time. Going to be a huge piece to them to try and get another championship. Him and Giannis are going to be a crazy duo because now you can't just only defend in the paint. Now you actually have to defend on the 3-point line, and you have to worry about the kickouts and everything. But the Blazers received Drew Holiday, a very nice player. DeAndre Ayton, I think, very underrated center. I know a lot of people probably speak highly of him, but I think he is a potential, not MVP. He could be an MVP, but a potential. He's an all-star every year, I believe, is what I'm trying to put at. They also get the 2029 first-round pick unprotected, and then they swap picks with the Bucks for 28 and 30. I didn't know you could trade out that far in picks. That's kind of wild. That's actually an insane. Like 2029 is
Oh yeah,
6 years away. That's a little ridiculous. The Suns, they got some names I cannot pronounce. Nurkic,
It's
Nurkic.
Nurkic.
Okay. Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. Some nice players. I don't know much about them. I know Nasir Little, kind of a platoon guy. Nothing, crazy special from what I remember. But do you know anything about any of these players, or who do you think won this trade?
Well, the thing about DeAndre, wait, real quick, I forgot to mention this. Did you see that Houston lineman fucking throw up in the middle of the game and then just go back into pass blocking?
Yeah, I did. I mean, that's Texas football right there.
I was like, the defenders didn't want to touch him. Anyways, yeah, DeAndre Ayton. Um, the Phoenix Suns definitely downgraded as far as center go. They went from Ayton to Nurkic, but it's also kind of like when you think about it, like Ayton is definitely a better center when he cares.
Yeah.
Because DeAndre Ayton just patently did not give a shit about the team that drafted him first overall. Over Luka, by the way.
Yeah. Could have had Luka Doncic, but then you wouldn't have CP3.
Yeah, he was the he was the first overall pick for the Phoenix Suns, and at some point, I think in their playoff loss series to the Mavericks, he just said, "Yep, I don't care about them anymore," and so he just he doesn't put in very much effort, and when he does put in effort, he can be a very good center, but there's so many questions about whether or not he actually cares.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and it sounds like the Trailblazers are trying to shop Drew Holiday around now that they have Drew Holiday. I don't think that it sounds like they're not very committed to keeping Drew Holiday. So maybe they'll give him to Miami as oh, I feel bad that you guys didn't get Dame. After all that talk, the Bucks weren't mentioned once. All these months, they weren't mentioned once, and then all of a sudden they ended up with Dame. Crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, right now it looks like the Bucks won the trade. The Bucks won the trade. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But unfortunately for me as a Mavericks fan and a Phoenix Sun S tier hater, this kind of sucks a little bit because Grayson Allen shoots threes annoyingly well, and he's kind of annoying. And now they kind of have a little bit of depth, which was the whole thing that people were saying about them, is they've got all these superstars and no depth, which will kill you. Like you can win some games like that, but it'll be in the long run, it's going to catch up to you, especially when you have players like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker who are always injured, and then all of a sudden you don't have anybody good behind them. It'll kind of hurt your team in the long run. But now they're kind of adding some depth, which is annoying, and I hate them. Did I mention that I hate them?
Yes, I think you did.
And I don't know how if you're like the Mavericks, you respond to some of these moves in the West, because the Mavericks have basically completely overturned their whole roster.
Yeah, I mean the Mavericks are pretty much full set on the next coming years being their time frame for a potential championship. So while I do think the Bucks won overall on this trade, I think obviously they're not going to trade away a player. That they're not going to trade for a player of that caliber without giving away some stuff. I do think the Blazers did get a really good package. I think Drew Holiday, yeah, he's older, but I think he's pretty good. And like you said, they're trying to shop him as well. The first round pick unprotected is huge. Having it unprotected as well, because we don't know what the Bucks will be like in 2029. I think Giannis's contract's up by then. Dame obviously will be most likely gone or retired, so they could be in a complete rebuild. And so if it was a top 10 protected, that is a little bit scary, but having it just be unprotected is huge. And then swapping the rights on their 2028 and 2030 picks, we'll have to see again with the first round pick before. We'll have to see what the effect is of there. I think potentially the Blazers could win this trade in the long run, but I think if the Bucks get a championship or a championship appearance from this trade with Damian Lillard on their team, I think the Bucks won this trade. The Suns don't really get much, I don't think, in terms of what they give up. Like you said, they did give up a player who maybe has some personality issues, but I don't know. This is a wild trade for them. I don't see them getting the package that both the Bucks and the Blazers. I don't see the benefit really for a team that is trying to compete right now.
Like I said, it's depth is what
Mm-hmm.
they kind of want.
Yeah.
And they kind of they're getting a center who will maybe give a damn. I guess I don't know, but I don't completely understand going from Aiton to Nurkic, but I think Nurkic isn't that bad. He's a nice center, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's nice. I think that's the way I would describe this package for the Sun is they're nice players. Are they, game changing? We'll have to see.
no,
Not as game changing as Damian Lillard is.
yeah,
So before we move on to the NFL, I know you wanted to mention the WNBA, correct?
yeah. And I mean, I'm just being honest. Like I know that most people really don't care about the WNBA, and I don't really either. I mean, I do, but I don't. Like I'm a box score watcher for
Mm-hmm.
the Wings, um, and sometimes I'll be at like a restaurant, I'll see it go by on the TV and be like, oh, neat, But I think it is fun that it's a playoff basketball for them, and right now the Dallas Wings are facing off against the Las Vegas Aces, who the the Aces are a better team. I think they are. The Wings were 22-18 on the season, and Vegas is 34-6. You know, and the Wings just swept the Atlanta Dream, who had a losing record in the like. That's the Cowboys beat the Bucks in the playoffs. That's the same vibes. Um, and but that was off the backs of our star player Rika Agunbowale. I always have to remember how to pronounce her name. And most improved player of the year. I don't know how to say her name. Satu Sabali. Grant Williams from the Mavs tried to riz her up. I don't know if you saw that, but he
Mm-hmm.
went down there and to congratulate her, and you can see his phone. The new contact thing is open.
Oh my god. Oh, I think I did
Instead,
see that. Oh my
instead they
goodness.
just kind of awkwardly hugged and then
He does know those are on
walked
national TV, right?
away. Anyways,
Um,
but they're playing the Aces, who are better, and they've got Aja Wilson on their team, who just narrowly missed out on back-to-back MVP. But this is a 5-game series, and so they've already lost the first two, and they have Game 3 on Friday. If they lose that, they get swept. That's unfortunate. Um, and Wilson actually just broke the WNBA record for most 30-point games in a row in the playoffs.
oh wow.
With three, which
Hey, that's 3 30-point games, even in NBA, is impressive. Like that's
I mean,
that's
especially straight,
superstar. That's superstar like quality right there.
hmm And I mean, and she in this last game she had 11 rebounds as well. So
So she had a double double.
yeah, and
That's
and
pretty
part of it is
impressive.
the Wings. Yeah, and the Wings are not shooting well, and they are not defending well.
Can't win if you
Obviously, if
don't
they're
shoot or defend.
obviously they're giving up. They gave up 2 30-point games to Wilson. Um, and but and part of it is game one. Our stars, Sabali and Agunbowale, they didn't shoot well. Agunbowale had 12 points and shot 4 for 14. That's
That's
not
pretty bad.
great, and 2 for 6 from three actually. So you know, you can't shoot like that. And it was weird is the rest of the players on that team actually shot a little bit better. So they shot 46% from the field for game one. And they went to game two and they shot 37% from the field while giving up 50% from the field.
Hmm.
You can't do that. That's losing basketball.
Yeah.
And both and Gumbawali had a much better game too, but actually, and it's crazy. She shoots way better from three than inside the paint. She
I
shot 46% from three, and then 25% from inside the paint. Like
I
either
mean,
way,
obviously you have to work on the inside because it should be easier to shoot from the inside, but it's still good stats to have.
yeah, They need to do it. They need to do everything better. They need to shoot better and they need to defend better. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Just got to play better. Obviously, series isn't over. Like you said, it's a 5-game series, and who knows? They may come back and have a reverse sweep. Knock on wood. But we are wishing them luck. Is a local Dallas team, so we're going to be rooting for them. But moving on to the NFL, sadly, very sadly, very frustrating weekend for Dallas Cowboy fans, losing to what may be the worst team in NFL history. Lost.
I don't agree with that.
I know it's a hyperbole. I'm just trying to justify some way us losing, some trick by God, something as to why we lost this game, losing 28-16. Not even like they got a lucky field goal at the end. We got destroyed both offensively and defensively. Granted, we are without our arguably best player in Trayvon Diggs. I know Micah Parsons is probably better overall, but Trayvon Diggs, you can see the impact he had. James Conner went 14 carries, 98 yards, and a touchdown. It seemed like he was getting a first down every carry he got. Obviously, stats don't say that, but it felt like that what we were seeing. Made Josh Dobbs look like an actual NFL starter who went 17 for 21 with 189 yards and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Dak went 25 and 40 with 249 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Tony Pollard had 23 carries, 122 yards. That looks like a good lineup. And Michael Gallup actually looked really good. I think if anything we can take positive from this game, one, we can make field goals. Last game was not a fluke. And two, Michael Gallup is back from his injury. I think there was worry from last year. Last year he wasn't great, coming off of a hard injury to come back from. I believe it was an ACL tear, something in the knee. And, he had his flashes here and there, and we hadn't really heard about him much in the first two games. But this third game, 6 receptions, 92 yards. He was on some sharp routes, some nice comebackers, some nice curls. The good old Dallas 4 curls on a 3rd and 20. But I think if we're looking at it, well, Kellen Moore isn't doing too much better in the Chargers. But I think if we can look at one positive thing here, Micah Parsons is still Micah Parsons, and Michael Gallup is healthy. On the negatives, our defense got demolished. Yeah, all of it, but our defense got demolished. We gave up. We were losing at halftime, 21-10, and we thought, okay, bad start. We come out third quarter, all of the third quarter, all of it. One score happens, field goal. Okay, we didn't let them score. Good job, defense. Fourth quarter comes out, field goal. Then we give up a touchdown. That last touchdown really put the nail in the coffin, and didn't help that Dak threw a pick. It is his first pick of the year. I know a lot of people are hating on him. It is his first pick of the year. It was a terrible read. I don't know what he was reading there. I don't even know if there was a receiver in the area he threw it in. Watching the replay, there was 3 defenders on there. And he was just watching them the entire time. I don't know what the idea. It would have been better for him to just run. I don't advocate for Dak running. I will die on that hill. Dak, please do not run. You're gonna get your ankle hurt, or you're gonna make a dumb running play. But the defense was not playing good in the first half, and the offense was not playing good in the second half. And then the whole game, 16 points is just unacceptable from an offense that is projected to be a Super Bowl contending team. And losing to a team that basically threw last week against the Giants, I don't know. Obviously, they're going to come back, and I think, the Patriots game is a real test as to, was last game just a bad week? If they lose this week versus the Patriots, we might be reconsidering the Dallas Cowboys as a legitimate team. I know we said, they had an easy schedule at the beginning, but, they're still a really good team. Losing to the Patriots would be rough for this team, going 2-2, heading into San Francisco for the 49ers. I know you were watching the game. We were texting back and forth, talking about how awful this game was. Did you have any major takeaways or anything you wanted to talk about?
I do. I might have a lot to say, TBH.
That's fine.
Yeah. Here's the thing. What a team L.
Yes.
I'll point out. Like I said, I want to give Arizona their props though. The Arizona is the team that everybody picked to be the worst team in the league, and so far, I don't think they've been that. Last year, the same thing happened with the Falcons. Everybody said the Falcons were going to be the worst team last year, and then they weren't. They weren't necessarily a great team, but they weren't the worst. They were far from the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Well,
have
yeah,
to
they had the eighth
stop.
pick, so they were the eighth.
So we have to stop treating the preseason pick to be the worst team as the actual worst team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially like when you start getting into the season. Arizona played hard the past 2 weeks. And yeah, essentially they kind of essentially threw against the Giants question mark. I don't know, but they were playing really hard. And honestly, if you have Kyler in those games, they're 3-0 right now.
Oh yeah,
And
I think that's undoubtedly. I don't think anyone's saying with Kyler this team is not going to be not is going to
mhm.
be worse.
and I
Uh,
think well, and I think the thing is like is if you are the Arizona players is and the way that they're playing is they're looking around, they're saying, "Fuck it, we don't want Caleb Williams, we want Kyler Murray, and we're gonna try and keep this ship afloat until he comes back."
yeah,
And that's what they did. And I think the Cowboys took them for granted. Micah Parsons even admitted this on his little podcast or whatever he does. He straight up said, we didn't take them very seriously. And they played like it. The the Bears are the worst team in the NFL, by the way. But
yeah, they're
apparently
pretty bad.
apparently Trayvon Diggs was our whole defense because they couldn't stop shit.
Yeah,
But not only was it 21-10 in the first half, but the Cardinals scored on every possession.
yeah, that's you can't allow that. If you want to be a top
If
defense in
for
this league, you cannot have that.
Yeah, for the best defense in the league, how? How do you allow that? And part of it was like Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs is a cornerback, so it's not necessarily like all on him that we couldn't stop the run. But Josh Dobbs, more like Josh Vick. Do you see that motherfucker running out there?
Yeah,
Like,
he was insane out. Like I said, making him look like a legitimate quarterback in the NFL. And who knows? Maybe this is his turning point in his game. That after this year, let's say they go with Kyler, they don't get the number one overall pick, and they say, hey, you know, Dobbs, we don't need your services anymore. There could be a legitimate team out there looking for him, and to pick up in free agency.
mhm. And and here's the thing, like Micah included, like, in the bad play from the defense, is there are several plays that I watched him basically have Dobbs in his hand, let him go, and then Dobbs rips off for a huge run, including a 43-yard run in which Micah was right on top of him, and then he got past Micah and just kept going.
Yeah, you can't have that
Yeah.
happen.
Mhm,
You're the
and
leader of that.
so
You're the leader of the team. You are, you know, obviously without Diggs, you are the voice and the fire that the defense will have to play off of, basically.
and here's the other thing, the offense. The offense is, like, every year there's like a thing with the Cowboys that like holds them back. And we're going, oh, I hope this doesn't become a problem later. Because sometimes if like for the most part you're winning, so you hope it's like you're like, oh, it's whatever. 2 years ago is the penalties. There's a ton of penalties. And then it came back to bite us when we set a playoff record for most penalties in a game. And we lost to the 49ers because, who wants, a 1st and 10 at the 50 when you could have 3rd and 30 in your own end zone?
Yeah,
Because you have holding offense number, like,
yeah. When you see that yellow marker go off and you go, well, holding before they even call it, you know it's bad.
Mhm. Last year it was those interceptions and the tipped balls and all that sort of stuff. Is that we were winning games because we were still scoring a ton. You were winning games, so you go, well, we hope this isn't a problem later, and then it was. Um, Found this year's
Yeah.
of many maybe because the penalties still seem to be an issue because they gifted Arizona several first downs in that game with the penalties.
Hmm.
But it's the red zone offense, man. The offense looked good until they got to the end, to the red zone, you know.
Yeah. Looking.
Also all our receivers still aren't getting separation. That's a little concerning because I thought Brandon Cooks was supposed to be like the deep threat guy, and Michael Gallup looked good, but it's still like concerning that CeeDee Lamb is the only guy on the team that like we've seen get separation 3 weeks in a row.
And even he, I mean, he didn't get locked down, but he Obviously, they were his whole different game plan and game strategy, but he was not what we saw in the first two games. I think they probably focused on him a lot heavier than maybe the other two teams did. But looking at the team stats, you would think this is a Cowboys victory or a very close game. Dallas had 416 yards. Arizona had 400. Dallas had 26 first downs. Arizona had 20. The time of possession, Dallas almost had 10 minutes more of possession than Arizona. They did have one turnover, whereas Arizona didn't. So you looking at those stats, you would think, hey, maybe this is a fist fight, back and forth, and then just one team got lucky at the end or came away with it at the end. But in actual play, it felt like a bloodbath. It felt like no matter what the Cowboys did, it ended in failure. Like, we'd get a stop on defense, and then the Cowboys offense would go 4 and out. And it's like, okay, can we get some kind of momentum going here? Can we get a score? I don't care if it's a field goal at this point. Finally, that we have figured out how to kick field goals. Like I said, maybe the one silver lining of this entire thing is we have a kicker now. I know we said that with Brett Maher a couple years ago, and then obviously no longer on the team anymore. And Greg Zerloin as well. You know, both of them kind of falling apart at the end of their Cowboy tenure. But yeah, moving on to the Cowboys next week. They have the Patriots at home. There is concern with Will Greer and Zeke Elliott apparently giving some signals maybe to the Patriots, letting them know the Cowboys hand sign. I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. You know, do I think Bill Belichick is pushing the boundaries of the gray area of the rules? Yes, he has done it in the past. I'm not accusing him of anything. He has definitely done it in the past of misinterpreting the rules, we'll say. But fair is fair. If the Cowboys are going to use the exact same signals that they did when Will Greer was there and Zeke Elliott, then, you know, why not allow, or why get mad? Get mad at the Cowboys for not changing their signals. You know, it's similar in baseball. If the other team figures out your call signals or your signs or anything like that, fair and square, obviously not with the way the Astros did it, then that's just gamesmanship. Like, you got to be better at that point. But so that is at home. Obviously, it's not at Arizona. Oh, and I would like to address, I did not mean to put a curse on the Cowboys with Arizona and the injuries. After we recorded the podcast, the very next morning, we got the news about Trayvon Diggs' Achilles injury, out for the season. And I texted James saying, I think I cursed us. This is the worst news we could have happened. I did not mean to say anything. I am not going to talk about injuries anymore. I'm not going to talk about anything like that, just in case. I don't want any of that bad noise on me. Obviously, I said Micah Parsons would be the one getting injured. So, you know, if anything, not my fault. But I'm going to cut it off there so nothing else happens.
By the way, that
yes.
was on our own field, though, because Trayvon Diggs was going to go see Beyonce at AT&T that night.
Yeah, whatever. So, like, but it was against Arizona. That's all, you know. Arizona is the Legion of Boom killer. But again, this is at home. They are ranked at, or projected to have a 68.6% chance of winning. So, you know, good odds, over 50%. They are the favorites in this one. And I think one thing that wasn't mentioned as well was Zach Martin and Tyler Biotish did not play. And I believe both Tyron Smith didn't either. Three of our offensive line starters did not play. So maybe that had some effect, and they're questionable for this game. I know Biotish and Martin both were practicing today, so maybe they'll look like they'll be playing. Tyron Smith did not practice, so he'll probably be day-to-day. So if they can get back, I think that really improves both the run game and the pass game, and, you know, protection overall for Dak, obviously.
So, Tyler Smith actually had his first game back from injury last week too, so our offensive line has been so piecemeal so far. And the run honestly looked decent. Both backs, Pollard and Dowdle, looked pretty good. Dowdle caught our only touchdown too. Wow, that was fun. Good for Rico. And he also had the crazy juke where they like had a surefire tackle on him, like behind the line of scrimmage, and then he like got out of it and like ran for like 20 yards. Great job. Also, Dak had a weird run where he juked some people out. What? That was weird.
He did, but like I said, I do not want Dak running. I want Dak to be Peyton Manning, and where he stays in that pocket and he either goes down with the ball or he is throwing the ball. I don't want to see him running. I think it's too risky. but obviously made a good play, so I'm not going to hate on him for that. It's just when he would make a bad play or get injured, I'm going to start hating on him for it.
That is true. And like I said, for his first pick of the year, but it's a bad pick for sure. Like the other, like a lot of the ones last year, I could be like, not his fault. This year, like that one, I was like, that's bad. That's Dak.
What I think is really concerning in terms of the picks is versus the Jets, he gave up a pick six that wasn't a pick six. Like Sauce Gardner should have caught that and run that into the end zone. We should be looking at two interceptions right now. We're lucky it's only one. I'm not jinxing it, knocking on wood.
No, stop giving them propaganda.
It's not.
I gotta say my shit and be like, didn't Jalen Hurts throw 2 against the Bucs? Because he did.
But I will say I will die on the hill. Jalen Hurts is a system of the team around him. I think he's a fine quarterback. I think he is an absolutely fine quarterback. But do I think he's on the level of Patrick Mahomes? No. Whereas I see people putting him on the level, obviously because they played in the Super Bowl, on the level of Patrick Mahomes. And Josh Allen, it's kind of hard to compare now because he hasn't been playing as great. Same with Lamar Jackson. But
I want to talk about that too.
About which one?
Who you think is the number 2 quarterback now behind Mahomes? Who is the Vegeta to his Goku? But
I mean, technically, Brock Purdy is the number 2 quarterback. He might be the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. He is undefeated in the regular season, and he's undefeated on games where he doesn't get injured in the second quarter and doesn't play the rest of the game.
He got injured, I think, in the first quarter. That one game.
Was that the first quarter? So yeah, that's even less of his fault. I mean, he came back into that game, by the way, but he's undefeated in the regular season. He's like 17-0. Granted, he is also like Jalen Hurts. He is a system.
Like 12 now.
Okay, whatever. But he is a system of his team. I'm not gonna hate on Jalen Hurts and then say Brock Purdy's just this amazing quarterback. But he is like. You look at their stats side by side, and it looks like Brock Purdy is a just better, I would say better player overall. Obviously, I think Patrick Mahomes is the undisputed number 1. I don't think anyone will make the argument that Patrick Mahomes is not the number 1 quarterback. If he stays healthy this year, he's winning the MVP. If somehow the Vikings could figure out a way to win, then Kirk Cousins might win the MVP, which is a crazy.
It's Tua's to lose as long as
really
his brains don't. I think as long as his brains don't turn into scrambled eggs, I think it's Tua's to lose.
I think obviously they had the big smackdown 70-20 was it versus Denver, like crazy game, and obviously they have some great players, but I think. I just can't trust Miami. I can't trust that O-line to last the full season. I can't trust those players to stay healthy. I mean, they have basically San Francisco's old running back crew. And Jeff Wilson, who's on the IR. Raheem Mostert, who was on San Francisco. They have, I forgot
Devin A-Chain.
Yeah, Devin A-Chain.
Who had like 200 yards and like 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns
in pretty much his first game. I mean, like he played last week.
They had 2 out there doing behind the back, like no look passes. Like what?
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a mini Patrick Mahomes, but in the terms of like the full length season, I don't see that offensive line being able to hold up for the whole season. Could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that offensive line is great, and I hope Miami, makes a run in the playoff because I'd love to see Tyreek Hill versus Kansas City in the playoffs somewhere somehow. Just kind of like a revenge game. I definitely think the Chiefs would blow them out. I don't think that Miami defense is good at all. Granted, they held, Broncos country, let's cry, to 20 points.
Broncos country, let's die.
Yeah, at this point, I think the Russ experience, the Russ hype train is over. Granted, he did have 2 good first games. I think one was a win, one was a loss. I think they're 1-2 right now. But
can you imagine going from like the best defense, like one of the best defenses in the NFL, to giving up 70 points in one off season?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who had Denver's defense in fantasy, I don't even know how the points. I don't even know how the points work on. Obviously, like they give up a massive amount of yardage, but I think if you play Denver's defense and that happens, you should just automatically get the L. Like there should be no like. I don't care if you had Devontae Adams and you had Tua and you had all these other players. I don't think you should be allowed to win that week.
How many points did they score in fantasy?
So they got -6 last week.
That's it.
In standard PPR, because 46 plus points allowed is on -5, and then 550 plus total yards allowed is on -7. They did have a kickoff return touchdown. So without the touchdown, they're at a -12. So I know we don't talk about much fantasy, and we can. That could be a segment we talk about, is like some waiver wire people to pick up. This is a little difficult, as James and I are both against each other in 2 leagues. Congratulations, by the way, on beating me last week in our main league. Was a pretty close one, but had some disappointing things. But back to the Cowboys, I think, this is a must-win game, I think. I know it's early in the season, but versus the Patriots at home, you got to get your mojo back for the week after, where you're going to the 49ers and then to the Chargers and then versus the Rams and then the Eagles. That's a tough 4-game stretch that you have to perform. You have to be performing right. Everything has to be firing right if you want to win those games, especially that 49ers game. That 49ers game could be ugly, or it could be, a masterpiece. It could be an all-time classic.
Yeah. Yeah. You need you. Like I said, is the way that I'm looking at it is this is a similar roster to last year and the year before. And given what we've seen of this roster is too good for the team to look like it just did.
Yeah.
That's what I said from the beginning. This roster, from the first week that we did this roster can and should win multiple Super Bowls. Plural. But it's not going to, because it's the Cowboys and they're going to cowboy it up.
Yep. Cowboys be Cowboys.
I said, we weren't even around for their glory days, so all we've ever known of the Cowboys is them being chokers and jokes. For 30 years. Saying it has to stop, because one year they have to look at their team and say, no, we're better than this. And it should be this year, because they are through and through better than this.
Yeah.
This roster, honestly, I think can beat any team in the league. And I think, as you pointed out, is last year, it's week 3 right now. I'm not worried. But Mahomes and the Chiefs dropped one to the horrid Colts last year in week 2. As long as the Cowboys don't repeat this, I think there's still hope. But it's like, this team, they have to look and say, like, hey, that can't happen again, obviously.
And I'm not saying the Cowboys can't lose a game. I'm saying they can't lose a game in that fashion.
I know.
That was a brutal loss. Obviously, if they lose by a field goal, then it's, hey, what went wrong? Let's fix it for next time. But this is, are we burning the ship, or are we trying to save this thing? And I was actually asked by a friend of mine, what's worse, being a Cowboys fan or a Bears fan? And I said a Cowboys fan, because a Cowboys fan gives you all this hope, and they say, hey, we're going to be great this year, and then they underperform. Bears fans, you just know you're going to suck. Like, you just know you're going to be.
The Bears had hope this year. The Bears had hope this year. They were telling me that
anyone
was going to be an MVP candidate.
Anyone who said Justin Fields was going to be an MVP is the most delusional person ever. He has not performed.
I know that.
He has not performed once. I mean, he has performed like for 3 weeks in a row last year, and then he gets hurt. He has not performed on a consistent basis and proven he can be healthy to be an MVP. He basically would have to beat out Patrick Mahomes. That's not happening. I don't care if he's Patrick Mahomes 2.0. He's not beating out Patrick Mahomes in terms of MVP. Plus, we had Joe Burrow, who looked, I mean, obviously hasn't performed so far, but had high hopes for him being an MVP. You still have Justin Jefferson, who, I know it's a quarterback award, but Justin Jefferson can make the argument for MVP. Like, I don't see how anyone thought Justin Fields was going to be an MVP. I still don't see how people are saying, like, he can still be the leader the Bears need. I think they got good pieces. I think DJ Moore was a huge trade. And I don't think they should have, like, taken Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I think that's a bad idea. Obviously, you go into next year and you're looking at, maybe we take Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams could fit in that team. I think he's got the physicality and has the, obviously he's not an Alabama or Ohio State quarterback, which is the main worry. I know it doesn't really have anything related, but like, they don't do good in the NFL. There's only one really good NFL, only one Hall of Famer from Alabama who's played in the NFL. Ohio State, I believe, has none who have played quarterback. They just do not they do not translate from college to the NFL, especially Ohio State. They have a lot of spread offense, very run heavy. Whereas I think Caleb Williams is a and I know the word generational is thrown out a lot these days, but I think he truly is a generational quarterback. I think he's got the strength, the arm strength of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. And I think he's got the speed of like a Dak Prescott, like a Mahomes, the ability to improvise, the MVP Russell Wilson. I think he has that ability, and I think he can stay healthy. You know, he's not taking these dumb hits that I see like Justin Fields just running into 3 defenders, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you saw them. Why are you running into them? But I think, honestly, if you're a Bears fan, you're tanking for Caleb. You want Caleb Williams. You have a good wide receiver core around you. You know, get Caleb Williams in the first overall pick, and maybe with your second pick, trade up for some offensive line, because there is some good offensive line in this draft class as well. But get some offensive line help for him as well. You got to figure something out if you're a Bears fan. But like I was saying, I still think it's worse to be a Cowboys fan just because we get our hopes up every year and then get it crushed midway through the season.
Oh, yeah. Also, again, I'd like to point out the interception thing. Again, Hurts, 2 interceptions. Sam Howell had 4.
Well, no one's expecting Sam Howell to be amazing.
No, there was people telling me Sam Howell was going to be good.
I thought he was going to have a step-up season. I thought he was going to have a nice season and prove that he can, like, you know, with the right team around him, can be a really good quarterback.
But here's the thing: Dak Prescott, we lost. That was a winnable game if they don't turn the ball over in the end zone twice, because they turned it over on downs too.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, essentially that pick sealed it, is the loss. But Kirk Cousins did the same thing. He threw a pick in the end zone that lost them the game. You know, we're not going to hear shit about that, though. Jalen Hurts had 2 interceptions. We're not going to hear shit about that. Joe Burrow had 0 touchdowns and an interception. That interception I watched was a freakish play by the defensive back, but we're still not going to hear shit about that. Josh Allen just be throwing punts up. Like, you see that guy? I don't know what happened to Josh Allen. Josh Allen can obviously rip the football. You watch him and he's throwing darts in between. But whenever he throws deep, he just decides it's a punt, I guess. Because every time I watch him throw deep recently, it's an interception. I don't know what's going on with that. Either way, he threw up a terrible interception last week too. You're not going to hear shit about that. Everybody's talking about how good he is right now. Sam Howell had 4 picks. I haven't heard shit about that. Jimmy G had 3. I didn't hear anything about that. Danny Dimes with another 0-1 stat line. Didn't hear anything about that. All 3 other quarterbacks in the division had more interceptions than passing touchdowns this week, and only Hurts leveled it with rushing touchdowns. But because it's Dak and it's the Cowboys, we're not going to hear the end of it.
I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, I think Dak's interception was terrible, but there definitely is some like media bias against him in terms of his performance. But closing things up, did you have anything else you wanted to in on at the end of this?
Since I kind of already said it, by the way, I'm transferring my fandom to the Miami Dolphins.
Wow, what a bandwagoner. Wow, they put up 70 points one time, and all of a sudden, you're a Miami Dolphins fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I see how it is. The fake Cowboys fan over here. I'm a ride or die, and we're dying right now. But that's going to be it for this week on Dallas Sports. Obviously, got some hopeful matchups coming up for all Dallas Sports teams. Some successes, some failures, some major failures, and some future performances to look forward to. If you're watching this on Spotify, make sure to hit the rating button down below and let us know on the interactive poll what you want us to talk about next time, how you think the Cowboys will respond back from this week. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see y'all next week.